represents one product on the page. To add more products, we could make a copy of this code and add each product.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just want to...
HTML using React. We already learned this technique in the chatbot project, where we generated a list of chat messages on the page. So we're going to review how to generate the HTML. First, we need to save the data for these products in our JavaScript. To save time, I already did this. So if we go to our files, and inside products.js, I already saved the data for the products in this array. So we can just use this as our data. Each object in the array represents one product. So it has a name, this data, and first we're going to import that products array. So at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the products array from a string, and we're going to locate that file. So first we need to get out of the pages and source folder using .. and then we'll find the starting code folder and the data folder. Starting -code /data/ and the products file. Next, we're going to loop through this products array. So at the bottom here, above these product containers, we're going to insert using curly brackets the products array dot map and brackets. And we're going to give map a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. As a review, .map takes each value in an array and transforms it. In this parameter, we get each value in this array, which is a product. So again, a product is just this object. To do that, we're just going to copy this HTML. And inside .map, we're going to return brackets and paste that HTML. And to fix the formatting, we're going to press Control or Command Shift P, and then search for Format Document, and press Enter. And let's scroll up. And remember, whenever we loop through an array like this, we need to give each element a key prop equals curly brackets. So the key helps React keep track of changes in this array. Now the key has to be unique. So looking at the data, each product has a unique ID property. So we'll go back, and we're going to use the product.id as the key. So this basically takes each product object and transforms it into this HTML. So now let's save, and we'll check the website. And as you can see, we took each product and transformed it into some HTML. Now obviously, we don't want the product to be socks every time. So let's insert the details of each product. We'll go back to our code, and instead of displaying the socks every time, we're going to remove this and insert, and each product object has a name property. So we'll insert the product.name. And let's also replace the product image. So instead of showing the socks image every time, we'll remove this, and we'll insert the product.image property. Next, we'll insert the ratings. The way this works is that each rating has an image, and we just have to multiply the rating by 10 to get the image name. So for this one, we're going to put open curly bracket and close curly bracket around this value, and we're going to change this to a template string using backticks and backticks, and then instead of 45 every time, we're going to insert. And remember, for template strings to insert, we use $curly brackets. So in here, we're going to insert the product.rating.stars and then multiply it by 10. And this should give us the ratings image that we need.
Thinking about a degree in cybersecurity? Don't sleep on this. UMGC is waiving their application fee through June 1st, so now's the time to apply. Low-cost tuition, 100% online class.
Next, we're going to replace the rating count. So curly brackets, and we'll insert the product.rating rating.count. Next, we'll insert the price. So instead of this price every time, we'll insert the product.price cents. And we usually save money in cents because many programming languages have trouble calculating decimal numbers. Now, when we display it on the website, we want to display it as dollars. So to convert this back to dollars, we're going to divide by 100, since $1 is equal to 100 cents. And that's it. We inserted the details of each product into this HTML. This is the same technique that we used in the chatbot project, except our data is just a little more complicated now. Let's save. And check the website. And now we have a list of different products on the page. And we generated the HTML for these products. Now there is a small problem here, which is for these socks. It's showing the price 10.9. But usually for price, we want to show And we're going to scroll down to where we insert the price. So to generate the, and now this default HTML that we had before, and save. And now let's save these changes into Git. We'll go to the Git section, and at the top, we'll use a message, generate the HTML for the home page, and commit.
Most people using ChatGPT and Claude are leaving 80% of the value on the table. Here's how the top 1% of the users actually prompt. First, go into your Claude settings and add this custom instruction. Always critique your own answer after giving it. LLMs are notorious for telling you what you want to hear. This one change means...
Now, we're going to take this project to the next level and go beyond what we did in the chatbot project. We're going to add a use a backend products. The problem with this is an e-commerce website. You might not have enough. They set up another computer. We're going to visit the website. And this is how a React website works in the real world. We usually contact a backend to get the data. So we're going to practice that in this course. We're going to learn how to add a backend, and then we're going to learn how to use the backend to our. Click this link to open the backend code. With this link, use a backend. Let's add a backend to our project. We're going to click this link in the description, go to lesson 7, and click this link to open the backend code. And this is a backend that we can use with our project. I called it the e-commerce backend AI because this was built with AI, and I show you how to do that in another video. But for this video, I recommend downloading this version to make sure it works with the video. You can try to recreate the backend as an exercise. So we're going to click this code button here, and we'll click download zip. Once that finishes downloading, we're going to open the downloads folder. So for me, it's right here, and then we're going to unzip this. On Windows, we're going to right-click the file, and then click extract all. And on Mac, you can just double-click the zip file. Then, we're going to move this backend into our project. So we'll open our code, and then we're just going to drag this folder into our project. But first, I'm going to collapse these folders for now, and we're going to drag this folder to the outside, and click copy folder, so that the backend code is right beside our website. By the way, we call the website, or what the user interacts with, the front end. We're also going to rename this folder, so right-click and rename, and we'll just rename it the e-commerce backend to make it easier to understand. Next, we're going to start this backend. So we're going to go to our terminal. we're just going to so that the side and click copy folder so that the backend code is right beside our website. By the way, we call the website, or what the user interacts with, the front end. We're also going to rename this folder, so right click and rename, and we'll just rename it the e-commerce backend to make it easier to understand. Next, we're going to start this backend. So we're going to go to our terminal or our command line, and we'll click here to create a new tab. And then in here, first, we're going to change directory into the e-commerce backend folder. So we'll cd e-commerce-backend. So now the command line is running inside this folder. And the process for starting the backend is very similar to the website or the front end. So first, we're going to npm install to install all the npm packages that we need. And then we'll run npm run dev to start the backend. So this tells us dev. And then we'll run npm run dev to start the backend. So this npm install to install all the npm packages that we need. And then we'll run npm run inside these brackets, we can tell it how many decimals to show. We can scroll to the bottom and remove this default HTML that we had before. It is based on our computer. So what the company or the store does, the because it accessed the web in Korea. It was built with it. Then
I did a search for ways to make extra income as a software engineer, and data annotation came up.
After doing a short qualification a couple days later, there was a bunch of different projects to choose from. I don't have meetings, and I'm my own boss.
I had a dashboard full of coding projects paying me minimum $40 per hour. 100% recommend signing up for data annotation.
we're gonna move the name. So now the very simple 3000, which is localhost colon 3000. To test it, we're gonna go to localhost colon 3000 / API / products. And the backend should send back some data. And this is actually the data for the products. I can also click this checkbox here to show it in an easier to read format. And you can see this is the same products array that we were using before, except this is coming from the backend. So the way a backend works is when we access the backend using a URL, it will send back some data. So this is working. So now let's go back to our code and we'll save these changes into Git. Open the Git section and we'll use a message, add e-commerce backend, and commit. Next, we're going to learn data fetching. Data fetching means to get data from the backend using our code. So first, we're going to go to our files and let's go back to the e-commerce project and we're going to open our home page, which is right here. And we'll scroll to the top. And one way to fetch data or to get data from the backend is to use the function fetch and brackets. So fetch is a built-in function. It's provided by JavaScript. Between the brackets, we're going to create a string and we're going to put the URL that we want to get data from. So if we go back to our browser, remember that this URL gave us the product's data. So we can just select this URL and copy. And in our code, we're going to paste it into fetch. And make sure you have http:// in front. It doesn't show in the browser, but we need this in order for our code to work. So if we fetch data from this URL, this should give us the products data that we saw earlier. However, we cannot save this data in a variable like this. And that's because when we contact a backend, it takes time for this code to reach the backend and to get a response. So this code does not finish right away. It finishes at some point in the future. As a review, we call this and is that get a response and inspect from the backend. So inside here, we have some info in the console. Right click and we'll save and then check our website. And we'll open the tab for our website. And we're going to open the console. Right click, inspect, and the console. And you can see that we got the response from the backend. So inside here, we have some information like the URL that we accessed and a status code. 200 means it was successful. However, notice that we don't have the products data in this response. To get the products data, we're going to go back to our code. And this response object has a method called response.json and brackets. So .json gives us the data that is attached to the response. In this case, it gives us the products data. Now the tricky part about this is response.json is also asynchronous. So again, we can't save this in a variable. Instead, this is also a promise. So we have to use .then again and give this another function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And then inside this inner function, we have access to the data that we get from the backend. So in this case, this is the product's data. So if we console.log the data and save, and then check the console, you'll see that the backend gave us an array of products to display on the page. So this is the same thing as the products array that we saved in our file, but this data is coming from the backend. We can also return the dot then inside and then move before. This dot then waits for this to finish and then runs this function. This dot then. We can also return the response.json and then move this dot then to the outside. So this code does the same thing as before.
Want to break into cybersecurity but don't have experience? The Google Cybersecurity Certificate uses real
Note it. We do this data from the backend and commit. Next, notice that you using fetch is still a little hard to read. We use a dot. This code cleaner way to make requests to the backend. First, we're going to go to our command line and we'll open the tab for the front end. And here we'll press Ctrl+C to stop the Vite server, and we're going to npm install Axios and type @ and we're going to give it a version. So we can click this link in the description and then go to lesson 7, and this is the version of Axios we're going to use. So again, you should always use the version that you see on your page. So select the version on your page and copy it and then paste it in our code and press enter to install Axios. Once that's installed, we're going to run npm run dev to restart the Vite server. And then to use Axios in our code, we're going to go to the home page, and at the top, we're going to import Axios without curly brackets from a string Axios. And now, instead of using fetch, we're going to use axios.get. So this does the same thing as before, except the data from the backend will be saved directly inside the response. So instead of doing all these steps, we can just get the data using response.data. So let's console.log this to see if it works. Console.log and save. And then if we open the console, you'll notice it gets the same products data as before. But if we look at our code, it's a lot cleaner because we can just get the data directly from the response. So as you can see, Axios is a cleaner way to make requests to the backend. So now let's save this into Git. In the Git section, we'll use a message, use Axios to fetch the data, and commit. Now, let's use this data from the backend to generate the HTML, instead of using the products file that we had before. But first, we have a problem. This code is directly inside the homepage component. That means whenever the homepage changes or re-renders, it will run this code again and send another request to the backend. However, we just need to load the products once on this page. We don't need to load the products over and over again. To make this code run once, we can put it inside a use effect. At the top, we're going to import curly brackets use effect from React. And above this code, we're going to do use effect brackets and give this a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. Use effect lets us control when some code runs. We're going to move this code inside the use effect. So we'll cut, and then here by default, we can control the array. Array lets us control what we need here. We have the data. How do we use it in this loop down here to generate the HTML? To do that, we need to save the product's data inside the state. So at the top, we're also going to import use state from React. And at the top of our component, we're going to do const square bracket equals use state and brackets. As a review, use state gives us an array with two values. The first value is the name of the data. In this case, we'll name it the products. And then we'll type a comma. And the second value of use state is the updater function. The updater function lets us update this value, and then it will regenerate the HTML. We usually name the updater function set, and then the name of the data, capital P, products.
With base 44, a simple sentence becomes your website.
And finally, empty or save it in set, then from the. So the only thing to note is that we need to import this file here anymore. So the only thing to note is that the name of the data has to match the name that we use down here, so that this code is actually using the state. Now let's save, and we'll check the website. And everything still works, except now we're using data from the backend to generate this HTML. We'll go back to our code, and we'll save this into Git. In the Git section, we'll create a message, use data from the backend to generate the HTML, and commit. Next, if we look at the website, in the homepage, we also need to get the cart from the backend because we need to display this quantity number up here. To do that, we'll go back to our code, and we're going to make another request to the backend to get the cart. So below this request, we're going to use Axios again. Axios.get brackets a string, and we'll give it the URL http://localhost:3000/API/cart-items. The way this works is the backend is running on http localhost:3000. And after this, we add a URL path. Each URL path gives us different data. For example, the URL path /API/products gives us the products data. The URL path /API/cart-items gives us the cart data. So the URL path can actually be anything we want. Whoever creates the backend decides what the URL paths will be. In the description, you can find a documentation page for my backend. And this lists all the URL paths that we can use. A common naming convention is to start the URL path with /API. API means application, and the response is going to contains the product ID that we want to buy that we have responded with an array. And this array represents the cart that we have on the website of that. And this state will save the cart, comma, and the updater function set capital C cart. And let's set the starting value of the cart to an empty array. And we'll scroll down. And now once we get the cart from the backend, we're going to save it in the state. So instead of console.log, we're going to use the updater function set cart. And now the cart from the backend will be saved inside this variable. And remember that the quantity for the cart is inside the header. So we need to pass the cart into the header using a prop. So here we'll add a prop cart. And remember that the quantity for the cart is inside the header. So we need to pass the cart into the header using a prop. So here we'll add a prop cart equals curly brackets, and we'll give it the cart. Let's save this file, and we'll go into our code and go to components header.jsx. And then inside the header, we're going to get the cart from the props. To do that, at the top we'll type curly brackets and the cart. As a reminder, this is a shortcut for this code. And now we're going to calculate the total quantity in this cart. So at the top, let's create a variable let total quantity equals 0 to start, and then we'll loop through the cart using cart.forEach brackets, and we'll give it a function. And the inner function will get one parameter, which is each item in the cart. So we'll call this the cart item. And then each cart item has a quantity. So we're going to add that to this total quantity up here. We'll do total quantity plus equal the quantity equals 0 to start, brackets, and then we'll loop through the cart using cart.forEach brackets. And we'll give it a function. And the inner function will get one parameter, which is each item in the cart. So we'll call this the cart item. And then each cart item has a quantity. So we're going to add that to this total quantity up here. We'll do total quantity plus equal the cart item dot quantity.
Hungry Root makes sticking to my anti-inflammatory diet so easy. I just started an anti-inflammatory diet, and at first I was nervous I wouldn't have a ton of options.
And now we can scroll down till we see the cart quantity down here. And instead of 3 every time, we're going to insert the total here. Now we can scroll down till we see the cart quantity down here. And instead of 3 every time, we're going to insert the total and now we can scroll down till we see the cart quantity down here. And instead of 3 every time, we're going to insert the total quantity and save. And now if we look at our project, now it will display the total quantity using data from the backend. So now let's go back to our code. And if we scroll up, you might see an error here for props validation. Again, this is an older feature of React, so we can disable this check by going into our file, prop inside header from the backend, and display quantity and commit. Next, if we go back to the homepage, so in our files, go to Pages and Homepage, and scroll up. Notice that for each request, we're sending it to localhost 3000. So we can actually set up a shortcut in Vite, so we don't have to type. And save. And then we're going to go to our files and we're going to open vite.config.js. And inside here, we're going to add the property server colon, and an object. And inside we'll add the property proxy, colon, another object. And in here we'll add a string /API, colon, and we're going to give this an object. And inside we'll add a target property, colon, and the string http, colon, / localhost, colon, 3000. So this is called a server proxy configuration. This just means that if the URL path starts with /API, like we had it before, the request will automatically go to localhost 3000, so we don't have to type it every time. Another thing we can set up is when we load images, we also want to load them from the backend. Remember, the backend should manage the data, including the product images. So in here, we'll also add a comma and add a string /images, colon, and an object, and we'll give it the same target. So we'll select this and copy, and in here we'll paste and save. And we need to do one more thing. We're going to go inside index.html, and in the head, we're going to add less than base / greater than. And we're going to give this an attribute href equals double quotes and a slash. So this adds slash in front of any relative URLs. All the image URLs start with images, and this will convert them into slash. Images so that our redirect will work. Let's save, and we'll go back to the vite config. So now when we get images, we're going to get them from the backend. And now because we changed the vite configuration, it's a good idea to stop the server with Ctrl+C and then restart the server using npm run dev. And now let's check the website to make sure everything is working. So I'll just refresh this to make sure, and everything still looks good. So now we'll go back to our code and we'll save these changes into Git. Inside Git, we're going to type the message add server proxy config for /API and /images and commit. Next, we're going to move on to the checkout page. So let's open the website, and we'll click the cart icon in the top right, and we're going to work on this page. So on this page, we also need the cart to generate this HTML. So we'll go back to our code, and we'll open our files, and we're going to open checkoutpage.jsx. And now inside here, we could do another axios.get/API/cart again, but remember we already loaded the cart on the home page. It does not make sense to reload the cart whenever we switch pages. We just need to load the cart once for the entire website. To do that, we're going to go to the home page, and we're going to share this cart between the two pages using the technique lifting the state up. As a review, this means we move the cart state up to an outer component. In this case, the outer component is the app component here, which contains the homepage.
Smart founders know something most people miss. Get your domain name even if you're not ready to launch your business. With Wix, you can grab yours now and then get to work.
So we're going to layer the cart between the homepage. We're going to select cart and cut, and go back to the app. And we're going to lift it up in here by pasting it. And we also need the code that loads the cart. So in the homepage, we're going to select this code and cut and save inside app. Loads the cart. So in the homepage, we're going to select this code and cut and save inside app.jsx. Below this, we're going to paste. And remember, we need to put this inside a use effect so that it only runs once. So use effect, brackets, give it a function, and a empty array at the end, and we're going to select it and cut, and inside here, paste. And I'll select these lines and press Tab to reformat them. And next, we need to import this code. So at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, use state, and use effect from React. And we'll also import Axios. So at the top again, we're going to import Axios from the string Axios. So now that we have the cart, we're going to share it between these two pages using a prop. So for the home page, we'll add a prop cart equals curly brackets, and we'll give it the cart. And for the checkout page as well, cart equals curly brackets, and we'll save the cart. Let's save this file, and we'll go into the home page. And at the top, we need to access the cart from the props using curly brackets, the cart, and save. So the code should work the same as before, except we're just getting the cart from the props now. Let's open our website to make sure it works. We're going to go to the home page and refresh, and that looks good. We'll go back to our code. So now that we lifted the state up, we can just load the cart once for the entire website instead of reloading it on every page. We'll open the Git section, and we'll give it the message, lift cart up and share it between pages, and commit. Next, we're going to use the cart to generate the HTML for the checkout page. So first make sure that we pass the cart to the checkout page using this prop. And now we're going to open the checkout page, which is here. And we're going to access the cart from the props using curly brackets and the cart. And now we'll use this cart to generate the HTML down here. Now inside this code, we're going to press Ctrl F to find some code, and we're going to search for cart-item-container. And here, we're going to collapse this element, and we'll collapse this element as well. So each of these represents a cart item on the page. So let's generate this using the cart. Above this, we're going to insert cart.map brackets, and we'll give it a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And this inner function gets one parameter, which is the cart item. And for each item, we're going to return brackets some HTML. So for each cart item, we want to generate this HTML. So let's just select it and copy. And inside here, we're going to paste. And to fix the formatting, we're going to press Ctrl or Command Shift P and run format document. Now let's scroll up. And remember, when we loop through an array, each element needs a key property. Each cart item has a product ID, which is unique. So we're going to save the key as cart item.product. ID. And now, instead of showing the same product every time, we're going to insert the details from each cart item. However, there is a problem here. Remember that the cart looks like this. It doesn't have any product data on it. To fix this, we're going to go to the app component, where we load the cart. And at the end of this URL, we can add $expand equals product. So this is called a query parameter. A query parameter lets us add additional information to our request. When the backend receives this query parameter, it's going to add product details to the cart. So it's going to expand the cart with product details.
Check this out. I'm gonna show you how I afforded this car. Okay, you ready? All right, $118 for car insurance. That's how much I was paying, okay? I picked up the car a few months ago and watch this, ready? $97 premium, $20 were my fees, $118. Now, I covered up my private information, guys. $39, $118. Check this out, ready? $500 for comprehensive, $500 for collision, $500 for comprehensive, $500 for collision, okay? The same make and model, Hyundai Ioniq, okay? Guys, it's the same policy, $118 to $39 as you.
So now let's save this file, and we're gonna open the website, and we're gonna go to the checkout page, and we're going to open the console. So we'll right click, inspect, and inside the console, we're gonna open the network tab. I'm gonna remove any search that I have, and in here, we can see all the requests that we make to the backend and the responses. So by the way, requests only show up here if the console was open before the request. So we may need to refresh to get the request to show up in the network tab. And now we can see our request to cart-items. If you don't see it, you may need to search for it up here by typing cart. And we have it here. So we can open this by clicking it and then go into the response tab. And here, you can see the response from the backend. So now you can see that each cart item has a property called product. And this contains all the product details that we need for this page. So now let's go back to our code. And we're gonna go to the checkout page. And now instead of the socks every time, we're going to remove this and insert the cart item dot product dot name. And we'll also replace the image. So we'll remove this and insert the cart item dot product dot image. And down here to our code. And we're gonna go to the checkout page. And now instead of the socks every time, we're going to remove this and insert the cart every time, and we're going to go to the checkout page. And now instead of these, we're going to receives this query parameter product details from each card. Now instead of showing the same dot product ID, and now, instead of showing the same product every time, we're going to insert the details from each cart item. However, there is a problem here. Remember that the cart looks like this. It doesn't have to the cart. Any search in the tab to search for the product and insert the cart item dot product dot name. And we'll also replace the image. So we'll remove this and insert the cart item dot product dot image. And down here, we're going to insert the price. Now, if we go to the home page, remember that in the home page, we wrote some code here to display the price. So let's actually move this code into a function so we can reuse it. Inside our files, we're gonna click the source folder and we'll create a new folder. And let's call it utils for utilities. And inside the utils folder, we'll create a new file and we'll name it money.js. So this file contains utilities or code that helps us work with money. So in here, let's create a function and we'll name it format money. brackets and curly brackets. And we're gonna copy the code from the home page. So inside the home page, we're gonna take all of this code and copy it. And inside money.js, inside here, we'll paste it. And now we're gonna turn this into a string. At the front, we'll type the amount form, and we'll.
You bring the prop firm account, whether it's FTMO, TopStep, URFX, Funded Next, Apex, or FX Utopia.
So now we can go back to the home page and save. So now we can go back to the home page, and at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the format money function that we just created from a string, and we're going to locate the utils folder. So we'll go out of this folder with / utils/money. And now we'll scroll back down, and instead of this code, we're going to remove it and insert format money brackets, and we'll give it product. Use this. We're going to import curly brackets, the format money function from a string, and we're going to locate this file. And for me, I'll go out of this folder using / utils/money. Now, if you did the exercises from the previous lesson, this file might be inside a folder called checkout. In that case, make sure you have two / in front. And now we're going to scroll back down, and we're going to replace this money with curly brackets, format money brackets, and we're going to give it the cart item.product.price cents, and we'll replace the quantity. So inside the home folder brackets is for source folder, so we can .image, and down here the cart item.product.image, and down here we're going to insert the price. Now if we go to the home page, remember that in the home page we wrote some code here to display the price. So let's actually, we're gonna .js inside here, we'll paste it. And now we're going to turn this into a string. At the front, we'll type backtick, and at the end, a backtick to create a template string. And remember, in template strings, to insert something, we need $ curly brackets. And now, instead of getting the product.price cents, we're going to pass it into this function. So let's name the parameter amount cents, and we're going to remove this. replace it with amount sent. So this function lets us convert any amount sent into this format. At the end, let's return this value from the function. And and we'll export it and insert format money in the checkout curly bracket // at money bracket cents. No, go back to the backend, and this was the default HTML we had before. So now we can go back to our code. We can scroll down bell we had before in the git HTML, and at the top we'll type the message generate HTML for the cart items and commit.
I just built a budgeting app with Base 44.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now. Anything else?
Can this thing process in?
Next, we're going to generate the HTML for the delivery option. And here, we'll load the delivery options from the backend. So first, let's import Axios. At the top, we'll import Axios from the Axios npm package. And we'll also need import curly brackets, use state, and use effect to save the delivery options. So import it from React. And now inside the component, we'll create some state to save the delivery options. Const square bracket equals use state and brackets. And we'll name this delivery options, colon, and the updater function set delivery options. And we'll set the starting value to an empty array. Next, we'll get the delivery options from the backend. So here, we'll do use effect brackets, and we'll give it a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And at the end, we'll give it a comma and an empty dependency array so that this code only runs once on this page. And inside here, we're going to call axios.get brackets, and the URL to get the delivery options is /API/delivery-options. And then we're going to wait for the response to come back using .then brackets and give it a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And inside the function, the response from the backend will be saved as the response parameter. So once we get this response, we're going to save it in the delivery options up here using set delivery options brackets response.data. Now let's save this code, and we're going to check the network tab to see if it works. So we'll open the console, and we'll open the network tab, and we might need to refresh to make sure we get the request. And we'll remove this and search for delivery options, and we'll click one of these, and then look at the response tab. So the backend responded with 3 delivery options. Each delivery option has the number of days it takes to deliver and the price in cents. However, if we open our website, notice that each delivery option also has an estimated delivery time. So we could use this delivery days to calculate this date on the front end. But remember, it's generally the backend's job to manage the data and do these calculations. So if we go back to our code, this URL path also supports a query parameter called expand. So at the end, we'll add question mark, expand equals, and I called it estimated delivery time. So when the backend sees this expand parameter, it will calculate the estimated delivery time for us and then give it back in our response. If we save and check the console and refresh and open the response, and now you'll see that each delivery option now has an estimated delivery time in milliseconds. So now we'll go back to our code, and we have what we need to display the date. As you can see, it's generally the backend's job to manage the data and to do the calculations. And now the front end's job is to present that data in an easy to read way on the website. So now let's use these delivery options to generate the HTML. We're going to click in. Its job is to present that data in an easy to read way on the website. So now let's use these delivery options to generate the HTML. We're going to click in this file and press Ctrl F to search for code, and we'll search for delivery-options. And inside here, we should see an element with a class name delivery option. So we're going to collapse this element and also collapse the other delivery options. And each of these represents one delivery option on the page. So let's generate this HTML using React. Above this, we'll insert So now that to present that delivery option for code, we should see an element with a class name delivery options. We'll press Ctrl F to search for code, and we'll search for delivery. We're going to click in this file and press Ctrl F to search for code, and we'll search for delivery dash options. And inside here, we should see an element with a class name delivery option. So we're going to collapse this element and also collapse the other delivery options. And each of these represents one delivery option on the page. So let's generate this HTML using React. Above this, we'll insert and we'll run the code delivery options dot map brackets and give it a function brackets arrow and curly brackets, and the parameter will be each delivery option. And here we're going to return brackets some HTML for each delivery option. So we want to return this HTML, so we can select it and copy, and inside here we'll paste. And we can fix the formatting using Control or Command Shift P and press Format Document. Some HTML for each delivery option. So we want to return this HTML, so we can select it and copy, and inside here we'll paste. And we can fix the formatting using Control or Command Shift P and press Format Document. And let's scroll up. And as always, we need a key prop whenever we're looping through an array. So we'll add key equals curly brackets, and each delivery option has a unique ID. So we just set it to the delivery option dot ID.
I dare you to let me build you a completely free e-commerce store preloaded with 20 handpicked products that are trending all over the world, basically validated by AI from a trending product database from one of the top vendors on the planet. And the reason that we can do this completely free for you is because, well, Shopify is paying me to do it. You've probably seen me before, because for the last year, Shopify has loved the AI-paired software.
Next, we're going to replace these values every time in milliseconds. So how do we display it as a date like this? To do that, we can use another npm package called day.js. So we're going to go to the terminal and go to the tab that's running our front end, and we can press Ctrl-C to stop the server, and we're going to npm install day.js, and we'll type @ to give it a version, and we're going to click this link in the description to get the version of day.js we're going to use. And we'll copy that version and paste it in here. And press enter to install day.js. And after that, we're going to npm run dev to restart the server. So the day.js package helps us work with dates, and it helps us display a date in a particular format. To use it, we're going to scroll to the top, and at the top we're going to import day.js from the package day.js. And now we'll scroll back down, or we can Control F and search for delivery options. And we'll scroll down here. And now above this date, we're going to insert, and we're going to run day.js and brackets. And we're going to give day.js a time in milliseconds, which we actually have inside delivery option dot estimated delivery time ms, or milliseconds. And now that we wrapped this in day.js, we can format it into this format. So after this bracket here, we're going to use the method dot format and brackets and give it a string. To show the time in this format, we're going to type D 4 times, which is the day of the week, and then we'll type a comma to show this comma, and a space, and we'll type capital M 4 times to show the month, and a space, and we'll type capital D, which will show this date. And now we can remove this code. Next, we're going to replace this price. If the price is free, we'll show free shipping. Otherwise, we're going to show the price dash shipping. So we're going to scroll up to the inside of this loop here, and we're going to create a variable for the price. So we'll do let price string equals a string, and to make it easier, we're going to set this to a default of free shipping, and then we're going to overwrite this if we have a price. So below this, we're going to check if brackets the delivery option dot price cents is greater than 0, curly brackets. So if it is not free, we're going to overwrite this price string equals a template string, and inside we're going to insert, and remember we have the format money function to display the price. So inside here we'll call format money and brackets, and we're going to give it the delivery option dot price cents. And at the end, we're going to add a dash and shipping. And now we can scroll back down, and instead of free shipping every time, we're going to insert the price string. Next, we're going to scroll up a bit, and there's a few things that we need to replace for this input type radio element. So this represents the selector, and there's a few special attributes that we need to replace. The first one is the name attribute. So the name groups these selectors together. So each set of selectors should have a unique name. This makes sure that for each product, we can only select one of them. So here, instead of doing delivery, option 1 every time, we're going to replace this with the product ID, because each set of selectors should belong to one product. So in this code, we're going to replace it using curly brackets, and change this to a template string using a backtick and a backtick. And instead of 1 every time, we're going to insert, and we'll insert the product ID. Now in this code, we actually have access to the cart item from above. So inside here, we can just insert the cart item.product ID. Next, we also need to update this checked property. So this determines if the selector is checked. So we don't want the selector to be checked every time. Each cart item has a delivery option ID, and this is the one that should be checked. So inside here, we're going to add a new line, and we're going to make check equal and insert some code. And we're going to compare if this delivery option.id is equal to the cart items.delivery option ID. So only the delivery option that matches the delivery option ID in the cart will be checked. So that's all the things that we have to replace in the delivery options. So now let's scroll down and we can remove this default code.
This is the Google AI Professional Certificate.
Start here to gain the skills for a new way of working.
Maybe you've asked AI to help write an email.
And save. And let's check the website. And now we're generating these delivery options, and the correct ones are checked, and we have the estimated delivery dates for each displayed in an easy-to-read format. The last thing we need to generate is this delivery date up here. So we'll go back to the code, and we're going to scroll up to the cart item, and we're going to find the cart item container and this delivery date here. So this date is determined by whichever delivery option is selected. So first we need to find the delivery option that is selected. So inside this loop, we'll create a variable const for the selected delivery option and equals. And to find this, we're going to get the delivery options and then use the method .find and brackets. And find gets a function, so brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And in this inner function, it receives each delivery option. So we'll call it delivery option. And I'll just add a new line here and select this code and press tab to format it a little bit. So the way that find works is it's going to loop through each delivery option, and the first function here that returns true is going to be the result. So that's how we find something. And then it's going to save it in the here that returns true is going to be the result. So that's how we find option. And so the way that find works is it's going to loop through each delivery option, and the first function here that returns true is going to be the result. So that's how we find something, and then it's going to save it in this variable. So inside here, we want to return the delivery option.id that is equal to the cart items delivery option ID. So the delivery option that matches what is inside the cart item will return true, and that's going to be saved in here. And now we can replace this date. So we'll type curly brackets, and we'll use day.js brackets and the selected delivery option dot estimated delivery time ms, and outside this bracket we'll use the method dot format brackets and give it a string, and to get this date format we'll give it d 4 times, a comma, and capital M 4 times, space, and capital D. And now we can remove this date here. And before we run this code, there is one small problem here, because remember, the delivery options start out as empty. So if they are empty, we might not find the selected delivery option. To fix this, in front of this code, we're going to check if delivery options.length is greater than 0, and type and. As a review, this works like an if statement. It will check if delivery options.length is greater than 0, and then only if it's true, it will run the rest of the code. So now we can save and check the website. And now we're generating everything here using data from the backend. So let's go back to our code. Generating everything here using data from the backend. So let's go back to our code, and we'll save this into Git. Inside the Git section, we'll type the message, generate the HTML for the delivery options, and commit. Next, if we go back to the website, we're going to generate the HTML for the payment summary here. Now we could calculate all these numbers inside React. However, we're going to use the backend to calculate these numbers. Remember, the backend's job is to manage the data and to do the calculations. The front end's job is to present the data in an easy to read way. So let's go back to our code, and we'll go back to the checkout page, and we'll scroll to the top, and we're going to create a state for the payment summary. So here, we'll type const square brackets equals use state and brackets, and we'll name this payment summary, comma, and the updater function set payment summary. And as the starting value, we're going to use null, because the payment summary is going to be an object, and it's a little easier to check if the object is not loaded if we set it to null at the start. Next, we're going to use Axios to get the payment summary from the backend. So down here, we'll use axios.get brackets, and we'll give it the URL path /API/payment-summary. And we'll use .then to wait for a response and give it a function. And inside here, we can get the response. Once we get the response, we're going to use set payment summary brackets response.data to save the data inside here.
This may be the last ad you ever see. Because with the free AdBlock extension from Capital One Shopping, you can say goodbye to ads on sites like YouTube. That's right, no more interruptions, just non-stop streaming on your favorite sites. And while we're blocking ads,
so now response, I'm gonna .then to wait for a response and give it a function. And inside here, we can get the response. Once we get the response, we're gonna use set payment summary brackets response.data to save the data inside here. So now save and check the response from the backend. So we'll go to our website and open the console and open the network tab, and we'll refresh just in case. We can click this to remove the search and type payment, and we get the payment summary. So we can click this, and you can see that in the response, the backend calculated all the numbers that we need. So now we just need to present this on the page. Let's go back, and we'll press Ctrl F in this file, and we'll search for payment dash summary, and press enter to find the next result. And this section represents the payment summary on the page. And now we'll replace these numbers with the numbers we got from the backend. So first, we'll replace the total quantity here using curly brackets. Press enter to find the next result. And this section represents the payment summary on the page. And now we'll replace these numbers with the numbers we got from the backend. So first, we'll replace the total quantity here using curly brackets, and we'll replace it with payment summary dot total items. And here we'll replace the product cost. I'll type a new line to make it a little easier to read, and we'll insert. And remember, for money, we need to format it using the function format money brackets, and we'll get the payment summary dot product cost cents. We'll scroll down and we'll replace this next number. So we'll remove it and new line and curly brackets, and we'll run format money again, brackets, the function format money brackets, and we'll get the payment summary dot product cost cents. We'll scroll down and we'll replace this next number. So we'll remove it and new line and curly brackets, and we'll replace this. And remember, for money, we need to format it using the function, and we'll place summary, the total quantity here, using curly brackets, and we'll replace it with payment summary dot total items. And here we'll replace the product cost. I'll type a new line to make it a little easier to read, and we'll insert. And remember, for money, we need to items. F in this file, and we'll search for payment dash summary. Press enter to find the next result, and this section represents the payment summary on the page. And now we'll replace these numbers with the numbers we got from the backend with payment. And here we'll replace the product cost for money cost dot format before cents, and this if the payment summary is loaded. Otherwise, we don't have this information. So above this code, we're going to type curly brackets, and we'll check if payment summary and brackets. So this checks if the payment summary object exists. If it's null at the start, it's not going to run the rest of the code. And now we're going to put all of this code inside here. So we'll select all this code up to the place border button, and we'll cut. And inside here, we're going to paste.
I haven't been to the grocery store in months because this delivery service offers hundreds of high-quality, non-GMO groceries and recipes that help me feel my best daily. Hungry is the easiest way to take all the stress and guesswork out of eating healthy. Think of it as having your own personal shopper and
Now, a problem here is that we're returning multiple elements inside this brackets. So So to fix that, we need to wrap this in a fragment using less than, greater than, and remove this for now. And at the end, after the button, we'll do less than / greater than. So we're returning one element inside this bracket. And now we'll format our code using Control or Command Shift P and run format document. And save. And that's it. Now we're generating the payment summary using data from the backend. We'll go to our website, and that looks good. So now let's go back to our code, and we'll save this into Git. In the Git section, we're going to type the message, generate HTML for the payment summary, and commit. Next, we're going to work on the orders page. So we'll go back to our files, and we're going to open the orders page. So first of all, the orders page has a header component. And remember, the header now needs the cart in order to display the quantity. So we need to share the cart with the orders page first. We'll go to our files and open app.jsx, and we'll scroll down. And here, we'll share the cart with the orders page using a prop cart equals curly brackets, and we'll save the cart and save. And now we'll open the orders page again. And at the top, we're going to access the prop using curly brackets and cart. And we're going to pass this cart into the header using cart equals curly brackets and the cart. Let's save, and we'll open the website, and we're going to go to the orders page. So first we'll click here to go to the home page, and then we'll click here to open the orders page, and it should be working. So now we're going to generate this HTML using data from the backend. So we'll go back to the orders page, and at the top, we're going to import what we need. So first we'll import Axios from Axios, and we'll also import curly brackets, use state, and use effect from React. And now down here, first we'll create some state to save the orders using const square brackets equals use state and brackets, and we'll call this data the orders, comma, and the updater function set orders. And at the start, we'll set the orders to an empty array. And below this, we're going to make a request to the backend using use effect brackets and a function brackets arrow and curly brackets. And down here, we'll give it a empty array so that it only runs once. And inside, we're going to use axios.get again brackets, and the URL path for the orders is /API/orders. And then we'll do .then to wait for the response from the backend. We'll give this a function, brackets, arrow, curly brackets. Inside this parameter is the response from the backend. And once we get the response, we're going to save it inside orders using set orders, brackets, response.data. Let's save. And now we can check the network tab to see if we got the orders. We'll open the console. Inside the network tab, we can refresh and remove this and search for orders. And down here, we'll click this request and go to the response tab. And the backend gave us the orders that we need to display. Now, the problem here is that we only have the product ID in the order, but we also need to display some product details on the website. And again, the backend supports an expand parameter for this URL. on the tab, refresh, save, and now we can check the network tab to see if we got the orders. We'll open the console. Inside the network tab, we can refresh and remove this and search for orders. And down here, we'll click this request and go to the response tab, and the backend gave us the orders that we need to display. Now, a problem here is that we only have the product ID in. In the console, we're going to save it inside orders, data. Let's save, and now we can check the network tab to see if we got the orders. Whoa. Open the console. Inside the network tab, we can refresh and remove this. Inside the network tab, we can refresh and remove this and search for orders. And down here, we'll click this request and go to the response tab. And the backend gave us the orders that we need to display. Now, a problem here is that we only have the product ID in the order, but we also need to display some product details on the website. And again, the backend supports an expand parameter for this URL path. So at the end here, we'll add question mark expand equals products. This time, make sure you have an S at the end. So now let's save and check the network tab again, and we'll refresh. And now inside the orders request, you'll see that each order has the product ID, but it also has the other data for the product. And this is what we need to display on the website. So now we'll go into our code and we're going to generate the HTML. So first we'll press Control or Command F, and we're going to search for order-container, which is down here. And we can collapse this code and collapse the other order container. Each of these represents an order on the website. So we're going to generate this HTML. At the top, we'll insert and we'll run orders.map brackets, and we'll give it a function. And this parameter is going to be each order. And for each order, we're going to return some HTML. So we want each order to be converted into this HTML. We're going to select it and copy it. Inside here, we'll paste, press Control or Command Shift P, and run format document. And we'll scroll back up. As always, we need a key prop when we're looping through an array. We'll set the key equals, and each order has an order.id property.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice.
So you're saying we can all...
As usual, we're going to replace the values in here. Feel free to pause if you want to try it yourself first. So for the delivery date, we're going to insert, and we're going to use day.js brackets, and each order has an we use dot format brackets and a string, and to display the date, we're going to use 4 capital M's for the month and a capital D for the date. We'll import day.js format money because we're going to from a string. Scroll back. We're going to remove this and the brackets order dot total. I'm going to replace this cost cents. We'll scroll down, and here we're going to replace this the products in the order, and we're going to generate this using React as well. So above this, we're going to use curly brackets, and we're going to get the order dot products array, and we're going to loop through it using dot map brackets. Function and save each product, and for each product we're going to return brackets some HTML. So if we collapse this code and collapse this element and this element, and we also collapse this code and collapse this element and this element, and we also collapse these. So 3 of these elements represents 1 product. It's a little different because we don't have an element that contains all of these because we're using a grid here, but it works in a similar way. We're going to copy this code, and inside return, we're going to paste. And the one difference here is that if we scroll up, we're returning multiple elements from this function. So we need to wrap these in a fragment. So at the top, we'll type less than, greater than. But then we have another problem here, which is, remember when we loop through an array, each element that we return should have a key property. And we can't add props to fragments like this. To solve this, we need to use the full fragment syntax. So we're going to scroll to the top, and for React, we're going to import using comma the fragment component. So we'll scroll back down, and in here, we're going to use a full fragment syntax and remove this. So this does the same thing, except now we can add a key prop to it. Equals curly brackets, and let's set the prop to the product.id. And we'll scroll to the bottom, and before these brackets, remember to add the closing fragment tag. And finally, and we'll scroll to the bottom, and before these brackets, remember to add the closing fragment tag. And finally, we'll press Ctrl or Command-Shift-P and format document. And now we can replace this default code that we have down here.
Here's the rule I follow every single trading day. I only trade during the same short window. I only look for one predictable pattern. And if it's not there, I don't trade. That's it. No scanning hundreds of charts, no forcing trades, no staring at screens all day. This is why I can trade for about 20 minutes and then go live my life. Most people struggle with trading because they overcomplicate it. Too many indicators, too many opinions, too many decisions. In my free live web class, I'll show you the exact structure of this predictable pattern, why simplicity actually gives beginners an edge, and how to start without needing tens of thousands of dollars. This isn't about getting rich overnight, it's about learning a process you can actually follow. Click the link below and join the free training, and we will answer all your questions live.
Wait, how old is the new hire?
I don't know, but he literally uses Excel.
You must be the new analyst.
Yes, first day.
The name and insert the curly brackets, replace it with product.image. And actually, I made a mistake. I forgot that all the product details are saved in a property called product. So let's actually rename this to order product. And then here, we're going to do the order product.product.id and the order product.product.image and the order product.product.name. And then down here, to replace the delivery date, this is directly on the order product. So we can remove this and insert, and we'll use day.js and bracket and give it the order product dot estimated delivery time ms. And outside these brackets, we'll do dot format brackets and a string, and we'll use the format cap. Capital M 4 times, product. We scroll down, quantity, and save. And now, if we scroll down, we can also remove the rest of this default HTML. And save this file, and now this default HTML. And now, if we scroll down, we can also remove the rest of this default HTML. And save this file. And now let's check our website. And everything should be working, except we're generating the HTML for these orders using data from the backend. So now let's go back, and we'll save this into Git. We'll open the Git section, and we'll give it the message, generate the HTML for the orders page, and commit. one file. To make our code clean, look at our for the orders page and commit. Next, if we look at our code right now, you'll notice we have a lot of code in one file. To make our code cleaner, we should separate our code into smaller components. So let's go to our files, and we're going to start with the home page. So inside the home page, we're showing a grid of products. To make the code cleaner, we can separate this into its own component. So we'll go to the pages folder, and we'll click it, and we're going to create a new file, and let's call it the productsgrid.jsx.
What if I told you that there's a way for you to start earning payouts with prop firms without losing challenges, without paying companies, and without wasting your time and your money? Welcome to Nexus Trading Solutions.
And now we have multiple components that are related to the home page. So usually we organize this into a folder. So inside here, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it home. Press enter, and we group all the components related to the home page inside here. So we'll move the homepage.jsx, and let's update the imports, and also homepage.css, and also the products grid. And whenever we move files, we need to make sure the imports are still correct. So in the homepage, I'm going to scroll up, and we should make sure that we have 2 // in front, because now we're inside an additional folder. So that looks good to me. And we're also going to go to app.jsx and scroll up and make sure that the home page is now inside the home folder. So now let's save and check our website and go to the home page to make sure it still works. So now let's go back to our code, and we're going to separate the products grid into its own file. So in here, we'll create the component using export function. Products grid, brackets and curly brackets, and we'll return some HTML. And we're just going to copy the HTML to here. So inside the homepage, we're going to scroll down to the products grid, and we can collapse this element and select all this code and copy inside the products grid. And we're just going to copy the HTML to here. So inside the homepage, we're going to scroll down to the products grid, and we can collapse this element and select all this code and copy inside the products grid. Inside here, we can paste and press Ctrl or Command Shift P and format document. Now we'll scroll up, and we're going to fix these errors. So first we need access to the products. So we can pass those in as a prop, curly brackets, products. And down here, we also need the format money function. So at the top, we're going to import, curly brackets, format money from a string, and we'll find that utils file. So we need to get out of 2 folders this time using // utils/money and save. And now inside the homepage, at the top, we're going to import our products grid. So import, curly brackets, the products grid from a string, and it's right beside the homepage, so we can just do /products grid. And then down here, we can remove this HTML and just use our component, less than, products, grid, slash, greater than. And we need to give it the products. So we'll create a prop, products equals curly brackets, and we'll give it the products. So as you can see, this makes the code much cleaner when we separate it into smaller components. The last step is, at the top, we can remove this format money function since we're not using it anymore. Let's save, and let's open the website, and make sure everything still works. So that looks good. Next, we're going to do the checkout page. So we'll go back to our code, and we're going to open the checkout page, and we're going to scroll to the top. And I'll leave separating the checkout header as an exercise. Go down here, and we can move the order summary section into its own component. So inside the pages folder, I'm going to click it and create a new folder called checkout. Now you might have already done this if you did the exercises from the previous lesson, but we're going to use this folder checkout, and I'm going to move the checkout page inside here and update the imports and also move the CSS files. And I'll make sure that the imports look good. So in here, at the top, make sure there's 2 // in front, and inside app.jsx, make sure that there is a checkout folder in front of this component. So I'll go back to the checkout page, and I'll create a new file. Let's call it the order summary.js. SX. And we're going to create export function order summary brackets and curly brackets. And we're going to return brackets the HTML for the order summary. Inside the checkout page, we're going to scroll down and find the order summary. We can collapse it and select this code and copy. Inside the order summary, we'll paste and press Ctrl or Command-Shift-P and format document. And we'll scroll to the top. And we're going to need the delivery options and the cart inside here. So we're going to get this from the props using curly brackets, the cart, comma, and the delivery options. And we also need .js and the format money function. So at the top, we'll also import day.js from day.js and import curly brackets, format money from a string, and find the utils file, which is //utils/money. And all the errors should now be gone.
I did a search for ways to make extra income as a software engineer, and data annotation came up.
After doing a short call.
And we'll find the utils file, which is //utils/money. And all the errors should now be gone. We'll save, and inside checkout page, we can remove this code, and we can use our new component, less than order summary / greater than, and we need to give it the cart equals curly brackets and save the cart, and we need to give it the delivery options equals curly brackets and give it the delivery options, and we need to import this at the top. So we'll scroll up, and here we can import curly brackets the order summary from a string ./order summary, and we don't need day.js anymore. So let's save and check the website, and everything still works. We'll go back and scroll down, and next we can also move the payment summary into its own component. Feel free to pause the video if you want to try it yourself first. Inside document summary and copy format document of a string with less than the into smaller, and here we'll import curly brackets the payment summary. We'll go so in here and we're going to go inside the order summary component. So in here the code is still a little bit too complicated, so what we can do is we can find this element with the class delivery options, and we can separate this into its own component as well. Feel free to pause the video if you want to try this yourself first. I'm going to go to the checkout folder, J delivery, select it, and copy control. Here, we need to get the delivery options using the props, so curly brackets, delivery options, and curly brackets, format money from a string, from the props as well. Save. Component less than item free import curly bracket dot slash to our code. You can see that our code is cleaner now after we separate this into another component. And remember, it's up to us how we want to separate our components. We can actually keep separating this into smaller components if we want. For example, we can also have a cart item details component or a delivery date component, but I'll leave these as exercises. Item details component or a delivery. delivery date component, but I'll leave these.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Let's get started on it. So here, inside the Pages folder, we're going to create a new folder for the Orders page. So Orders. And we're going to move this component inside here and update the imports. And we're going to move this inside here as well. And just make sure the imports look okay. So in here, we'll scroll up, make sure that these two have 2 ... slashes in front. That looks good. And in app.jsx, make sure that the Orders page is now inside an Orders folder. So we'll save this and open the website. And we're going to click here to go to Home and click here to go to Orders. And the Orders page should still be working. So I'll leave separating this as an exercise. We'll go back to our code. And to go to Home and click here to go to Orders. And the Orders page should still be working. So I'll leave separating this as an exercise. We'll go back to our code and we'll save this into Git. Go to Order. Orders page is now inside it. We'll put this inside the Orders page. Post component or a delivery date component, but I'll leave these as exercises. I'm also going to leave the Orders page as an exercise, but we can just get started on it. So here, inside the Pages folder, we're going to create a new folder for the Orders page. So Orders. And we're going to move this component inside here and update the imports. And we're going to move this inside here as well. And just make sure the imports look okay. So in here, we'll scroll up, make sure that these two have 2 ... slashes in front. That looks good. And in app.jsx, make sure that the Orders page is now inside an Orders folder. So we'll save this and open the website. And we're going to click here to go to Home and click here to go to Orders. And the Orders page should still be working. So I'll leave separating this as an exercise. to our code, and we'll save this into Git. Inside the Git section, we'll create the message separate into smaller components and commit. Next, we're going to go back to our files, and we're going to go to our home page. And we're going to review async await. Async await is a feature of JavaScript, and it lets us write asynchronous code like normal code. Right now, we're using promises, which means we need to use .then to wait for this code to finish, and then run this function. With async await, we can actually write this like normal code. To do that, in front of Axios, we can type await and space. So this is going to wait for this code to finish, and then it's going to move on to the next line. And now, because we're waiting for this code to finish, we can actually save this result in a variable. So at the front, we can save it in const response equals await this code. And now we don't need to use .then anymore, and we can remove it. However, in order to use await, we need to be inside an async function. So in front of this function, we need to add async and space. As you can see, async await lets us write asynchronous code like normal code, or code that runs line by line. And async await makes the code easier to understand. So in React, it's recommended to use async await instead of promises when we can.
Most traders fail because they're looking for too much. At 20-Minute Trader, we focus on one predictable pattern that shows up during a short window at market open. Not hype, not guessing, just a repeatable setup we look for every single morning. When that pattern appears, we already know what to do. When it doesn't, we stop and move on with our day. That simple routine has helped thousands of regular people, many with no prior experience, finally understand how trading works. I host a free masterclass where I break down what this predictable pattern looks like, why beginners often do better with it, and how you can leverage it without using your own money. If you've ever felt overwhelmed or confused by trading, this is the most beginner-friendly strategy out there that I know of. The training is free and you can ask questions live. Click the link below and save your seat.
Thinking about a degree in cybersecurity? Don't sleep on this. UMGC is waiving their application fee through June 1st, so now's the time to apply. Low-cost tuition, 100% online classes, and you can gain the skills to become an ethical hacker. UMGC.
However, in React, there is a small problem with using async await and use effect. As a review, when we put async in front of a function, this function will now return a promise. That's because this function has some asynchronous code inside, or code that takes some time to finish. So that means that this entire function is going to take some time to finish. That's why it has to return a promise. Now the problem is, the inner function in useEffect should not return a promise. It should only return nothing or a cleanup function, like this. A cleanup function is useful if we want to do some cleanup when this component is removed. So because this inner function is now returning a promise, it's sort of breaking the rules of useEffect. To solve this, we usually create a new function inside useEffect, like const get home data equals, and create a new function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And we're going to make this function async. And we'll leave this as an ordinary function. And now we're going to move our code inside here. So we'll cut it and paste it. And now because we're inside an async function, we can now use await. And it will also not mess up useEffect. At the end, we just need to run this function using get home data and brackets. So this gets the same data as before, but it uses async await. So remember, when using async await inside useEffect, we need to create a new function and then run the function. Otherwise, it will break the rules of useEffect. So let's save and check the home page and go to the home page, and everything still works. So let's go back and we'll use async await in the app component where we get the cart. So here, feel free to pause if you want to try it yourself first. We'll create a new function using const, let's call it fetch app data equals a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And we'll move this code into the function. So we'll cut and paste. And we'll select this and press tab. In front of the function, we'll use async. And now we can use await inside. So in front of Axios, we'll type await to wait for this to finish. And then we're going to save the result in a variable. Const response equals this result. And now we can remove .then and these brackets. And the code is much cleaner. Finally, we're going to run this function, fetch app data and brackets, and save. And let's do the same thing in the checkout page. So we'll go to the checkout page here. Feel free to pause if you want to try it yourself. Const fetch checkout data equals brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And we'll move this code inside, cut, and in here, paste, and select these lines and press tab. And we're gonna turn this into an async function, so we can use await inside. So in front of this request, we're going to await, and we're gonna save it in a variable let. Response equals. So we're going to use let because we have two requests here and we might want to reuse this variable. And I'll add a new line to make two requests of this, turn this into an async function, so we can use await inside. So in front of this request, we're going to await, and we're going to save it in a variable let response equals. So we're going to use let because we have two requests here, and we might want to reuse this variable. And I'll add a new line to make it a little easier to read. And now we can remove .then. And then down here, we'll also use await to wait for this to finish. And we're going to save the result inside response equals. And now we can remove .then. And the last step is to run this function. So fetch, checkout, data, and brackets, and save. We'll open the website, make sure the home page is working, and then go to the checkout page and make sure this is still working. That looks good to me. We'll go back to our code, and that's async await. It lets us write asynchronous code like normal code. I'll leave converting the orders page to async await as an exercise. So now we can save this into Git. We'll give it the message, convert, home, and checkout to async await. the next lesson, we're going to learn data mutation, which means instead of just getting data from the backend, we'll update data in the backend, and we'll be able to add products to our cart and create orders. And that's the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we reviewed backend, which manages the data for a website. We set up a backend for our project. We learned how to fetch data or get data from the backend. We learned Axios, which is an easier way to make requests to the backend. We learned how to generate the HTML using the data from the backend. We separated our pages into smaller components. Learned how to fetch data or get data from the backend. We learned Axios, which is an easier way to make requests to the backend. We learned how to generate the HTML using the data from the backend. We separated our pages into smaller components, and we learned async await, which lets us write asynchronous code like normal code.
Hungry Root is the easiest way to eat healthy. Hungry Root is kind of like having your own personal shopper and nutrition.
Here's async await. Which lets us write asynchronous code like normal code. Here are some exercises to help you practice what we learned in this lesson.